Hey, let's get your World Series breakdown. Obviously, right off the bat, the Dodgers are the favorite here. They have a lot of respect for this Tampa team. So let's get your breakdown comparing the Dodgers and the Rays. Let's start with the offense. Who do you give that edge to, Ian?
The Dodgers offense, I mean, this is their biggest advantage here. I mean, during the regular season, they scored the most runs in Major League Baseball. They had a higher team average, a higher team OPS. But I really do think you look at the offense for the Tampa Bay Rays for the regular season, and you got to toss those numbers out because most of their big impact players during the postseason have been players who didn't necessarily make a contribution during the regular season, notably Randy Arozarena, 7 home runs, postseason record, Mike Brasso, Mike Zunino, Joey Wendell, Manuel Margot. So they have almost an entirely different lineup than the one that they had during the regular season when they were hardly an offensive juggernaut. But the Dodgers, we talked about Cody Bellinger, reigning National League MVP. Mookie Betts didn't have a great NLCS, but MVP caliber player during the season. Corey Seager, again, NLCS MVP, Justin Turner, Max Muncy, Jack Peterson, all of them seem to come around as the series progressed, and I think that is something that the Rays should certainly be concerned about.
All right, check that out, folks. As Ian Castleberry joining the Wise Guys, this could be the area where maybe the teams are most even. How about the pitching, Ian? Who do you give the edge to there?
I'm going to give the Rays the edge here, mostly because they have 3 reliable starters. Charlie Morton, who was outstanding in Game 7, Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow. The Dodgers right now, I think, only have really one reliable starter in Walker Buehler. And it's crazy to say that Clayton Kershaw could be a weak spot on this team, and I think he will end up getting the Game 1 start for the Dodgers. That hasn't been announced yet. But Kershaw, he can flip a gem, and maybe in Game 1 of the World Series starting, that's his moment to shine. But Kershaw right now, not reliable in the postseason, and I don't think Dave Roberts does him any favors. We saw this in Game 5. Kershaw came out in the 5th inning to face the Braves a 3rd time through the lineup. And by then, not only Kershaw, he's weaker, but the Braves lineup, the Braves hitters, have a good look at him after 2 times at bat. And sure enough, he gave up runs to, facing Ronald Acuna, Freddie Freeman, Marcell Ozuna. So Dave Roberts has to be ruthless in pulling Clayton Kershaw from games. But overall, I like the Rays bullpen as well. We see they're almost nameless, faceless guys. They just all come out and throw, 96 to 100. Ryan Thompson, Pete Fairbanks, Diego Castillo might be their best reliever. Nick Anderson. The Dodgers obviously have some big arms coming out of the bullpen as well, but some of them are a little bit unreliable right now, notably Kenley Jansen. Blake Trinan has been inconsistent. Julio Urias has probably been their best reliever, but he's almost been like a second starter, when guys like Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin, can't go more than 1-2 innings. Urias comes in, and he was outstanding last night in Game 7, pitching 3 no-hit innings. They're going to need another effort like that for the Dodgers to win this series. But I give the Rays the pitching edge. I
want to argue that, especially with Morton. I mean, he is like the anti-Kershaw in the postseason, man. He just shows up.
Roy Halladay reincarnated almost, I think, using that term. But
well, yeah, I hear you on that. Oops. By the way, defensively, man, I mean, those Dodgers outfielders like, Bellinger and Mookie Betts have been making outstanding plays, like, robbing, players of home runs, and just really been something to watch. There's nothing more exciting in baseball than a player reaching over the wall to grab a home run away from the opposition. Defensively, Ian, who do you give the edge to here?
Yeah, Mookie Betts, if you hit it near him, it seems like he's going to catch it. And between him and Bellinger, they've had the flashier plays. Justin Turner made a great play on that rundown last night. But overall, I think the Rays defense is much better position by position. If you look at that series against the Astros in the ALCS, there were so many times where the Astros hit a ball hard, but the Rays, whether it's because of their advanced metrics, their data telling them where to position themselves, it always seemed like the Rays were in the right place to make a catch. And they also have outstanding outfielders who can make plays. Kevin Kiermaier in center field, Manuel Margot, in right field, Joey Wendell at third base. So overall, I think the Rays have the edge on defense.
All right. Check that out. Ian Castleberry rolling through his breakdown of the World Series starting tomorrow between the Dodgers and the Rays. Let's go to the bench, Ian. Boy, I'll tell you what, it seems like the Dodgers just have talent all the way down that bench. But how do the Rays stack up?
Yeah, the Rays, I think their bench has been thinned out, if for no other reason than most of the guys that were on the bench during the regular season are now in the starting lineup that I mentioned, like Randy Arozarena, Mike Brazzo, Joey Wendell. So their bench, they can't really bring a big bat off the bench. So I think the Dodgers have the clear advantage here, being able to bring people off the bench like Austin Barnes. Edwin Rios had 2 home runs in the NLCS. Depending on how the World Series roster shakes out, there are other big bats like Gavin Lux, Terrence Gore, who some listeners might remember from the Kansas City Royals, who can be an important pinch runner. We don't see as many bench moves in this postseason because of the DH, but I think Dave Roberts has more weapons off his bench than the Rays.
Speaking of Dave Roberts, Ian Castleberry talking Major League Baseball, breaking down the World Series between the Dodgers and the Rays, presented by Wendy Carver and the staff at Haywood County Farm Bureau Insurance, where it all comes down to community. I love Kevin Cash with Tampa Bay. Dave Roberts is kind of in the, I'd say, the unenviable position of almost expecting to make it to the World Series. He's fallen short. When he's been there, he fell short, even after a 3-1 series deficit. And there were people calling for Dave Roberts to his head to roll. And I'm like, really? All right, manager, who do you give the edge to here?
Dave Roberts probably gets more criticism than he deserves, but he's also made some very questionable decisions in the postseason. I mentioned him leaving in Clayton Kershaw for an inning too long in Game 5. I think in Game 6, even though it didn't bite the Dodgers, I think he pulled Walker Buehler an inning too early and risked tapping out his bullpen. He makes still some questionable pitching decisions that I think make you scratch your head. Kevin Cash makes some strange decisions too, but I think those are more along the lines of maybe bolder decisions following what the data tells him. In Game 7, he pulled Charlie Morton after only 66 pitches after he was dominating the Astros. It looked like a terrible decision, but I mean, he just showed grande huevos really in pulling Charlie Morton and going to his bullpen. I think Kevin Cash has pushed many more of the correct buttons in this postseason. I think you touched on it, Pat. I think Dave Roberts faces a lot of pressure, and sometimes I wonder if he leans a little bit too much in favor of his veterans. Okay, I don't want to pull Clayton Kershaw before he wants to come out. I think he has to be more ruthless in that regard. Same thing with using Kenley Jansen, maybe pinch hitting for somebody like a Max Muncy if it's necessary. I think sometimes Dave Roberts just is a little bit too conservative in his decision-making, especially when it comes to his veterans, and that could come back to bite the Dodgers here in the World Series.
Begins tomorrow. Ian Castleberry with the Wise Guys. And Ian, let's get your World Series pick. A lot of folks are saying this is the Dodgers' World Series to win. I'm giving the Rays a little more respect than that. Where do you stand?
I'm really going to hedge it here. Listeners can give me a hard time if they want to. I picked the Dodgers at the very beginning of the season to win the World Series, so I am going to stick with that. I'm not going to go back on that. I think if this team doesn't win, I don't know if they're ever going to win. This will be their 3rd World Series in the last 4 years. However, I think the Rays, they just have a way of keeping games close and coming through with the big hits. You could say that the Astros shouldn't have extended them to 7 games, and maybe that shows some weaknesses. But I think this is going to be a very close series. I'm going to say the Dodgers over the Rays, but it's going to go the full 7 games.
Wow, check that out. I agree. I mean, just don't count Tampa Bay out.